good evening and welcome to Unapologetic, the UK podcast on politics, news and stuff from a right of centre viewpoint. And although I did almost get the title wrong, I didn't quite there, which makes it already a better one than we did the other day, where everything we recorded completely vanished into the ether. My fault. Sorry, guys. Anyway, we've only got three of us in tonight. We've got Sam.
Hello.
We've got Jonathan.
Hello.
And we don't have Susan. Susan's cried off for the evening, so just the three of us. And the sad thing is, of course, we're going to have to redo most of what we already did. Excuse me a second. Most of what we already did on Friday night, because we recorded the whole podcast. It went really well, I thought. We had a good chat. And then it turns out I hadn't pressed the record button. So, not my finest hour. Sorry, guys. Anyway, ready to roll. And the first one is actually one that's come up, well, more recently than we did on Friday, because it wasn't really a story on Friday. And this is the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has given his full backing to his most senior advisor Cummings after he was accused of breaking lockdown rules. Mr Johnson said Mr Cummings had acted responsibly, legally and with integrity, and that he acted with the overwhelming aim of stopping the spread of this virus. But what are the claims? Well, we know the PM's chief aide drove 260 miles from his London home to his parents' estate in County Durham at the height of the restrictions in March. But allegations in the Observer and the Sunday Mirror said the former vote leave boss did not stay indoors while in Durham, and also that he made another trip there after returning to London in April. So he's basically getting hoisted on his petard, as it were. But what do you make of all this, Sam?
Petard.
Petard.
Maybe it is petard. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, it's a tough
What's
one.
what's the context of petard?
He was saying hoisted on his own petard.
Oh right, yeah. As opposed to a petard mortar, which fires a great big cannon shell at you.
Yeah, as opposed to that, yeah. Although I might have meant that. Sam, you were talking before Jonathan interrupted.
Anyway, so yeah, as I was saying, it's difficult because, you know, I get the argument that if you're supposed to be in charge of setting policy and advising on policy, you have to then kind of follow it yourself. But at the same time, a lot of the people that have attacked him are all kind of Remainers, so I do wonder if there's a bit of a Brexit thing going on here, and whether or not people are attacking him because they don't like him and have wanted him gone for a long time. But it's been interesting because it's developed quite a lot since this story keeps growing and growing, because a lot of Tory MPs backed him last night, and since then they've all kind of withdrawn their support, so that's also interesting.
Not surprising, just interesting. What do you think, Jonathan?
Well, I think the main thing with this, it appears to have put the sort of interests of, you know, 4-year-old child ahead of that of, you know, putting out a good government message. So yeah, he should be sacked.
Yeah, those 4-year-old children, who needs to look after them?
No, I mean, the thing is with the average 4-year-old, I mean, worst case scenario, this child would have been left alone in a building fending for itself. Well, 4-year-olds, I mean, they're not like 3-year-olds. I mean, they can operate, you know, things like, you know, TV remote and things like that. So it's, you know, they're perfectly capable of putting something in a microwave and cooking it themselves, or, you know,
A 4-year-old?
yeah, or pouring themselves a drink, or yeah. So you know, I think he's one of these people who's put his family first, and it's completely wrong, and he should be sacked.
Oh, I'm not with you on this, Jonathan. I don't think. I mean,
I thought you might not be.
I'm the first to be annoyed.
I'm just putting the alternative point of view here.
Look,
you know, I mean,
I'm one of these lockdown skeptics, right? Which doesn't mean that I don't think we should be in lockdown or that I don't think we should have taken precautions. In fact, I think Boris has broadly done a good job within the political realities he faces. But I think people are steadily seeing this new stream of information coming in about the actual results of tests and statistics and what's being studied all over the world, how different countries have approached it, and they're beginning to take different opinions. So for me, the fact that he went off way back in March and visited his parents, I don't think it's the end of the world. Yeah, obviously you shouldn't have done it, mainly because when you're telling other people to do something, you shouldn't then do the opposite yourself, right? Because it just doesn't look good. But beyond that, I certainly don't think there's a reason to sack the bloke. I mean, he gives, well, we are told he gives good advice. Personally, I don't know if that's true because I haven't heard the advice he's giving. And Boyce does good things and bad things, and I don't know which ones are Cummings. So I don't know whether I like his politics or not. But I don't think that this alone. I'm glad Boyce stood behind him. It makes a change to see a bit of loyalty in politics. Don't you think?
Yeah, and also I think it's a bit hypocritical of all the journalists saying like social distancing and then all clamouring around him to take photos, not maintaining a 2 metre distance at all.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I mean a few people have made that point, haven't they? That they were pressing right up on him and crowding his space. I mean that's the trouble. That's the trouble with this whole thing. All these people who seem to be breaking the lockdown rules, and they're showing these beaches and these crowded shopping centres and all these other things. Every time anyone does something wrong, everyone's up on social media moaning about them. But there are so many of them. Then some of those people who are moaning must be the same people who are doing, in my opinion. And it's just one of those things, isn't it, where everyone likes to say I'm with the group and this is disgusting, and on the other hand, are quietly going about breaking the rules themselves sometimes.
Disgusting.
Disgusting, yeah. What do you think, Jonathan?
I think the other thing here, which people haven't latched onto, is sometime last year there was a programme produced by Channel 4 called Brexit, the Uncivil War, in which Benedict Cumberbatch played Dominic Cummings. And, I mean, this was casting genius on the part of Channel 4 because a lot of people don't realise that they are actually the same person and that Benedict Cumberbatch is just the stage name of Dominic Cummings.
No, I think he's a bit of a lefty actually, mate, and Cummings is definitely not much of a
Oh,
lefty.
this is all part of the, trying to sort of portray yourself as not being Dominic Cummings, you see.
I've never seen them in the same room at the same time. That's true. I mean, I think Sam.
Well, there's the point, you see.
Sam, I think you hit on a point here. I think that there are other things coming into the fray. There are a lot of people, Remainers, who hate Cummings for basically helping to deliver Brexit. They hate him. They're never going to forgive him. And some of it is playing through, I think, to what's going on now. They've seen an opportunity to cancel him, and out they come all trying to cancel him. You reckon?
I don't like that word, cancel him.
Cancel. It's a good word. I think it's true. They do it. It's just so in case viewers don't know, cancelling is when the opposition of somebody, an individual, go looking through things he's said and done in the past and try and use them out of context to finish their career or do harm to them in the present day. And we see a lot of it. We see, people come to the fore and then suddenly groups of people go and look at what they've done in the past and try and find something from 25 years ago where they said something in jest, completely out of context, bring it back. Sometimes they find things that are genuinely wrong, but more often than not, they're just finding ways to get them.
Hey, people.
I think the thing here is that with Cummings is that actually, if you go back about 20 years, he was heavily involved in Britain not joining the euro, and frankly, he should have had a knighthood just for that on its own. And nobody has mentioned that, because this was something wonderful he did for Britain some years ago, and we'd have really been in stuck if we'd joined the euro.
Yeah, it's not doing great at the moment.
Well, it's never done great, but I mean the thing is that we he to a large extent helped avoid Britain joining the euro, and I'd say for that alone he should have had a knighthood.
But Cummings has tried all sorts of twists and turns, hasn't he? He's been saying, well, he only went there because he couldn't look after his child and he had to take him to their grandparents, and then people are saying, well, hold on, if you had the virus, you were taking the kid who was potentially a transmitter to your grandparents. But in the end, if the grandparents knew and they were willing to take the risk, then it's their family's business, isn't it?
But it's not the same house anyway.
What isn't?
The house he was going to was an empty house, and his sister, I think it was, and his cousin or something, were dropping off food outside the house. So they were completely isolated for a fortnight. They weren't connecting with the parents or whatever.
That's different to what
I read.
I mean, that's different to what I read, but perhaps we've read a different story. What did you make of it, Sam?
No, that's how my understanding was, that he went to live in because when he said his parents' estate, it wasn't like this council estate in Durham. I got the feeling it was like an estate.
Not. Yeah.
Like a big place, and he was obviously living in like the little butler chalet or something. That's kind of the visions I got of it.
Which is still probably bigger than our houses.
Exactly.
Anyway, look, I think we've given this an airing. We don't really know, do we, about Cummings? Let's have an unapologetic.
There was one other thing I'd mentioned with the Cummings thing is that this, first of all, he was there for just over a fortnight, self-isolating, which is what the government advised. So he's out of the way of everybody and self-isolating. But the other thing is that then there's this ridiculous report that he sort of went back to Durham. And this is based on one unnamed person's account that he saw him in Durham. But Durham's got more than one person living there, and nobody else saw him. Again, if you are going to accuse somebody of something, you at least, give your name. I mean, if I saw, I don't know, some random Labour politician rooting through my bins, I would certainly, say, who I was and what I saw. So it could be verified.
That's the whole point, though.
Unverifiable nonsense.
That's the whole point of how cancel culture works. They pick a thing, they put it out there, they get everyone to retweet it or to talk about it, and then the number of different people saying it makes it seem true, even if there's no originally any evidence of it. So, and this is how it works, how it always works. They're trying a common political trick of the modern world, sadly, and Dominic Cummings is just one, and it's done to both sides, although the left use it a bit more. Both sides can fall victim to it. So, it's a difficult one.
For me, it's disgusting, to be honest with you.
Sorry?
The media, I think, are just disgusting. They do this all the time with people. They just push and push and push and push. They've sent a big truck outside his house with pictures on it of Boris talking and stuff. They're just literally bullying him into submission.
They throw enough ammunition at him that all his allies fall back and say, I supported him at the start, but now it's too hot, I'm walking away. And how must that feel, right? You're the person who's being cancelled and all your friends vanish around you. It's bad for you and it's bad for them. And the media aren't even telling news anymore. The media are just making spectacles. The truth finders and the news finders of old are long gone, and I don't think we have any left. Anyway, let's have a vote. Unapologetic vote on whether or not Dominic Cummings should be sacked based on what we know at the moment. Should we sack him or not? Thumbs up or thumbs down, Sam?
Well, to sack him, is that
thumbs up
down?
Is a sacking. Thumbs down. No, sorry. Thumbs up is keep him. Thumbs down is sack him.
Keep him.
Keep him. Jonathan? Keep him. Keep him. Unapologetic say keep him, boys. So stay strong. We're with you. And that means that all of our 7,000 or 8,000 viewers, or maybe 6,000 viewers, or however many it is this time, but every time we have a mess up, they disappear. And then we gradually have to build them back again. But we'll see. Anyway, moving on to item 2. This is a strip club in Portland, Oregon, which has found a novel way to stay afloat during the coronavirus pandemic. The Lucky Devil Lounge transformed itself into the Lucky Devil Eats, which has dancers who deliver food to go, they say, a drive-up service where takeout orders come with an in-car experience. That includes performances, music and lights under canopies. Basically, they've got strip dancers dancing for you when you collect your food. What do you make of this as a way to cheer people up in the pandemic and keep your business going, Jonathan?
From a business point of view, hats off to the bloke. I mean, I wouldn't be using the place
not just
myself.
Not just hats off.
I just don't like drive-through food. But I mean, it's good luck to him.
What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Why don't men like breasts and burgers? Why not have them both together?
I don't think you... Well, chicken breast, I suppose. Oh, you mean breasts? I mean...
Yeah.
So
they're doing what? Stripping off and showing like their arm or something.
So if you were the owner of Whiz Beach Eats, a strip club that's turned into a restaurant, would you have your male dancers dancing for the girl customers who drive up?
Yeah.
Oh, well, fair enough then. That lets us she stayed pretty much on target there. All right. So just to clarify, they asked a couple of the members.
Genders. People's gender preferences. So people might request a lady if they're a lady themselves, or a man if they're a man themselves. You just don't know.
Or one of the other genders.
I'd have all the genders available in my Whiz Meat Cheese.
So all 97 genders would be there. That's a lot of staff you've got to employ. I'm not sure this works for beating the pandemic. If they've got to be socially distanced, you'd have to have the biggest venue on earth.
I like to be inclusive.
I know. Well, so they spoke to the man who runs it. He said He wanted to replicate some of the club's indoor experience without being too lewd. There's no complete nudity, Mr. Bolden said. We want people to no complete nudity. We wanted people to be able to take photos and videos and share this story on their Instagram and other platforms because it's just going to be a fun thing. I mean, so you've gone there to get some food and you've got the wife next to you, Jonathan, and you're driving up and there's some girl waggling her stuff in front of you, right? And she's asking what order. Now, are you going to look or are you going to look straight forward? Your wife's next to you. What are you going to do?
Just do whatever I normally do.
Yeah, which is?
I don't know. I've not been in that situation.
Oh, I think. Sam, what do you think? Do you think you're sitting there? Like, well, first of all, if you're the driver.
Yeah, say if I was a wife of someone. I'm just I wouldn't want them to look, to be honest.
I mean, just that the bloke's going to drive up, right? He's going to be terrified to look. If he even glances her way to be polite and tell her what orders, his wife's going to be like, "Pow! What are you looking for?"
This is what he should do, right? This is what he needs to do. He needs to keep eyes front most of the time. As he goes to collect the food, he has a quick glance at the breasts, gets the food, turns away, drives off, and as he's driving off, he's like, "Oh, they're nowhere near as good as yours, babe."
Okay.
That's how you
That's how you handle it.
Yeah.
So you looked then, did you?
Only briefly. I only briefly had a brief glance. I couldn't, not have a brief glance. But it was a waste of time. He glancing anyway because it just didn't even compare to your boobs. So yours a million times better.
Had to glance that way to make payment. I mean, you can't make payment without looking. You might accidentally, it's no good.
I think my wife would be more sort of irritated by me wasting money on takeaway food.
I know that about you, Jonathan.
Well, you've met my wife, haven't you?
Yeah, she's very nice. Right, so moving on. Agenda item 3. Primary schools will reopen at the earliest on June the 1st as part of Boris Johnson's conditional plan for reopening the UK. The reopening will begin with the youngest pupils in reception and Year 1 plus Year 6. The schools across the country have said they cannot ensure safety and will not be opening, some schools. Secondary pupils taking exams next year may get at least some time with their teachers before the holidays. Teachers' unions back the British Medical Association and have expressed concern about safety in the classrooms, but parents want to know when they can send their children back to school, some parents. Continued school closures will have a detrimental impact on pupil progress, Gavin Williamson said, and he's the Education Secretary, and he acknowledged that earlier in the lockdown. So there's all these different views. Schools going back on the 1st of June, what do you think, Sam?
Well, I think it's quite important that they do. I mean, I think every school has to make their own decision, and it's with the head teacher as to whether they do open or not. And they've only got to open if they feel safe. But I do think it's really important that kids do go back. There are a lot of children in some really desperate situations at the moment that need to be at school. That's a really safe place for them. So I think that's important. Whether they do or not remains to be seen, I suppose. I mean, I'm just reading today at the press conference, Boris was saying that he's not changed his plans and that he wants to open on the schools to open on the 1st of June. But apparently some are saying they're not going to open at all. So I suppose we have to just wait really and see what happens.
What do you think, Jonathan?
Where does this idea that going to school is a safe place? I mean, this is the venue for having your dinner money nicked, or getting beaten up, or people gobbing on you, or verbally abusing you. I mean, that's what schools are about, and the idea it's somehow safe is slightly bizarre. The other thing with this is a great opportunity to keep the schools closed, and then do a real fundamental review as are schools necessary. They've been doing online teaching. They could go more significantly that way. It would mean getting rid of a lot of expensive large buildings, which would free up land for housing. There's a great opportunity to thin out the number of teachers, because they would one podcast and cover 1,000 children. I mean, there's a lot of scope for massively saving money, reducing numbers of teachers, and freeing them up to go and work in industry or pick crops in the field or whatever they're actually needed for. I think the teachers' unions are providing the government with a great opportunity here, which the government doesn't seem to be grasping. The other thing is they've got the ideal guy, Dominic Cummings, who's very much a free thinker. He would be ideal to do an educational review and, reshape education.
Because he's not unpopular enough already.
Yeah.
Well, it has worked for Michael Gove,
Way to make the unions lose their minds. Hey, first of all, Jonathan, it sounds to me like you need to book a therapist to talk about your time at school, because the initial description there sounded very personal to me. And I just like that. I mean, by all means, feel you can talk to us. We aren't going to tell anyone, and it's not like anyone's watching. So.
No, exactly. The sort of things you're subjected to at school, having to go cross-country running. I mean, what's that about? Doing sport when you've got absolutely no interest in doing sport. I mean, most of your time spent at school is just spent avoiding things you don't like.
That's true, but you're looking at this from someone perhaps had a nice home life, that school was just this horrible punishment. But what about if you're at home and you're sexually abused or physically abused by your parents or both? And school is your only escape throughout the day.
And if you weren't at school, you'd be, like in a holiday period, you'd still be able to get outside the house.
Yeah, but we can't at the moment. Or not so much.
The moment is an unusual situation. But I mean, these children who are being abused manage to keep away from their parents during the summer holidays.
I like the phrase where they say... they cannot ensure their safety in the schools. When are they ever able to ensure their safety? This idea that you can guarantee safety is bonkers. I mean, kids having accidents and injuries and even are subject to crimes at school often, regularly. I mean, not so regularly it happens in our schools all the time, but it's always in the news, isn't it, somewhere or other? And different things happen. They can't ensure their safety. No, there's no guarantee of safety in life. Even if you stayed at home and never left your house, you can't guarantee safety, because something can also happen to you in the house. So I hate that language that they use.
But you can't. But it's very difficult when you ask reception kids, which are like 5-year-olds. You're asking 5 to go to school and socially distance. It's going to be difficult for teachers to manage, definitely. What are they going to do? Continually shout at the kids all day, 2 metres, 2 metres. It's not going to be easy at all.
No, I mean, it might be easier just to get them all to wear masks.
Maybe.
Don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, I'm not suggesting it's not easy to decide what to do, but it is doing real damage. Kids not being at school, real damage. It's doing immense damage to their futures.
Yeah, well, another point Jonathan's not failing to make and not to get into as well. It's that when you're 5, that is some of the most important years of your education, when you're learning to read and write. And what if their parents can't read and write? There's loads of parents that can't read and write. So what are they going to be teaching the kids at home? So then you're going to have a whole year of a kid not learning to read and write.
It's not a good situation for sure. And I know that parents are split, because some parents I've heard... I mean, for me, this is it. For me, kids must go back in September, to my view. Definitely got to go back to September. Whether they go back at the beginning of June for the last few weeks before summer, I think that should be down to the parents. Because in the end, the state is not the parents of the kids. The parents are the parents of those kids. And I think they should have the final say. I mean, I would encourage them, though, to look at the stats and look at the figures which show that young kids are statistically immune to COVID-19, which doesn't mean they're actually immune. They can catch it and die. But the chances are so low. I read today that they're 4 times more likely to be struck by lightning than to be killed by COVID-19. But we aren't terrified to send young kids out, in case they're struck by lightning. So we've got to look at the stats, and then if those parents take the view that it's just too dangerous, it should be their decision. Nobody should be telling them right or wrong.
No, it's definitely got to be the parents' choice at the end. But I mean, they've said that. They've said there's not going to be any fines or anything. So, the parents, they're not going to say, oh, that's it, you've got to go back to school, and if not, we're going to start fining you 60 quid a day or something. That's not going to happen. It's going to be the parents' choice.
I think Boris said that, didn't he? He said, in the end, we're not going to do anything to the parents if they say no. But I would encourage parents to seriously think about getting their kids back to school, unless they've got an elderly grandparent living in the house who can't isolate. In that case, maybe that's a good reason to think otherwise. Or the kid's got some underlying health condition they know about, or their parent has a severe like emphysema or something like that. So there are situations where it's sensible to keep the kids home until the new term in September. But for the most part, healthy parents, young kids, no grandparents living at home, think about sending them back. I'm going to, because my son's going back. All right, well, I think we're done, since you're all silent. Moving on to the next agenda item, which is the latest figures from the CDC. So there's been a revision in the stats for the what's called the infection fatality rate, the chart, the measure of people who've caught it and people who've died, basically, and they've taken it down to 0.26%. It's a question study. Not everybody agrees with it, like all of these things are at the moment. But John Ioannidis, professor of medicine at Harvard and the lead author of the Santa Clara study, has a new preprint out in which he estimates the IFR by looking at 12 seroprevalence, I don't know how to say that, studies in which the population sample size was greater than 100. His conclusion is that it's in the same ballpark as seasonal flu, i.e. between 0.1% and 0.2%. So what he's saying is, once you start factoring in all the people that have COVID-19 with no symptoms and all the various people who they believe have probably caught it, and then compare that to the number of people who've died of it, sadly, the result is that like a bad flu season. Now that's quite different to the really scary figures we heard in the early days, which put it on a path to something that was going to wipe out a pretty significant section of the population. Which doesn't mean that anybody dying isn't sad, because of course it is, and we always have to say that, because otherwise someone will come up and say you're being callous about people who've died. But it's good news, don't you think, that the IFR could be as low as 0.26%? What do you think, Sam?
Well, to be honest with you, I was kind of interrupted by reading a thing I'd just seen on the internet back about Cummings again. I know we've kind of moved on from that, but interestingly, a lot of people are saying what he's used is to say that the reason he wanted to go to Durham was because his son is autistic and he has to, obviously, used to being around familiar adults, and so that's why he wanted to go to the grandparents rather than sort of random neighbours or anything else. And that's a different angle on it, isn't it, really?
Well, it is, because the government gave an exception for kids with autism. So that would sound like he's actually within his rights to do it.
Well, also, the thing that Jonathan's saying is this is from the Independent, so, which, I don't know if they are independent, but it seems fairly fair. He basically is saying that Downing Street are claiming that Mr. Cummings went to stay with his family in Durham because his wife was ill. He feared he would soon catch himself and thought they would need help to look after their son. So obviously he wanted to take him to family. He said the couple stayed in a separate house to the rest of the family, who only ever dropped off shopping on the doorstep and never came inside, like Jonathan said. But a lot of people are saying, well, obviously on the way you must have had to stop and go to the toilet and etc. etc.
Yeah, but as long as he kept his distance, and regularly cleaned his hands and so on and so forth. And I mean, what's the problem? People who aren't banned from doing anything, are they?
What they're saying is that the guidance was very clear. If someone in the house has COVID or even symptoms of COVID, everyone in the house must stay in and not go anywhere for 14 days. So by him leaving to go to Durham, he broke that rule. That's the point they're making.
Right, and that is true. That was the original guidance, but they did make an exception for autistic people.
Well, not only that, but they made an exception for caring for vulnerable people, etc., etc.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like it was a very stupid thing for him to do, but he should have thought about it, because if you're in charge of setting the rules, to then be seen to so clearly break the rules looks bad. But sackable? I don't think so.
But in terms of the other point about the infection rate being quite low?
Is it good news, basically, that it could be as low as 0.26%? I suggest. I should point out that a number of people have come back and said, well, actually, that figure might be wrong, but he seems to be pretty confident that the figure is going to end up looking like a very bad flu year, which we've said in the past on this podcast, I think.
Yeah, and also a lot of places that have reopened haven't had a second spike either. So I think things are going to really start changing. I mean, I've definitely myself noticed people seem much more relaxed. I mean, there's kids playing outside where I live now, and there wasn't a few weeks ago. And I do think the public are starting to feel a bit more calm about this now. Yeah,
you go up the supermarket and you're in the queue, and whereas previously they were all standing looking petrified with masks on, now very few people have got masks on. They look much more relaxed. They're standing closer together. They're having a joke about it. which I'm not suggesting they're standing so close they're breaking the rules, but they're standing closer than they were, still within the distancing, and it just looks to me like everybody is less frightened than they were. Certainly the people I encounter. What do you think, Jonathan?
Yeah, I'd go along with that. It's I mean, if that infection rate is correct or even nearly correct, that is fantastic news, because it means that, you know, a lot of things could be relaxed.
Well, it will also mean that we'd have to have a think about whether we did the right thing in the whole lockdown in the first place. It's too early to say now, but we might have to look back at it. But I stress, if we have to do that, we shouldn't look back and criticise Boris for taking the decision he took. The public outcry was such that he had to. Political truth of it was that it's such he had to. And in the end, with a situation like this, it's better to err on the more extreme side and save more lives, even if you later turn out to have perhaps overreacted. And we don't know that yet. Perhaps he didn't. Perhaps it's going to turn out to be worse than this professor thinks. But I do think we're going to have a look at it all, so that if we have another pandemic in the future, which we certainly will, we learn lessons from how we handled this one. Don't you think?
I definitely think so.
Anyway, last agenda item, and this agenda item is our favourite on our discussion list. It's food, and it's about McDonald's having reopened 33 of its drive-through restaurants as it gets back to business amid the easing of the coronavirus lockdown restrictions. The fast food chain initially opened 15 of its 1270 branches for delivery orders earlier in May, and now it's opened 33 of them. The latest restaurants to open in London and the southeast of England will offer a limited menu between 11 a.m. and 10 p.m, with workers separated from customers by a perspex screen at the drive-through window. Customers will be asked to pay using a contactless method if possible, and spending is capped at £25 per car. So, I'm sure we're going to have a difference of opinion here, because I know we have different feelings about fast food in general. Jonathan, good news, bad news, what?
Oh, well, the weird thing here is having a £25 limit. I mean, this stuff's outrageously expensive, and 25 quid is going to get, what, 4 people their burgers?
Come on, you can tell you don't use a lot of fast food. McDonald's isn't the expensive one. You can get a cheeseburger for £1 at McDonald's.
79p actually.
There you go. There's my expert speaking.
And that is 30. You can get 31.6 cheeseburgers for £25. And no, I didn't do that in my head. I just used a calculator.
It's a lot of cheeseburgers.
I was almost impressed there.
Well, double cheeseburgers are £1.19. So in my special program, El Calculator, that equates to.
I hope it's not a model like was used from that guy who guessed at the deaths from COVID-19 at the beginning of and caused the lockdown.
21 double cheeseburgers you could have.
21.
Yeah.
So that's not a lot, but I still think if you've got a biggish family, you know, if you've got like, I don't know, 3 kids and 2 adults, and you're all having meals and chips and drinks and desserts, you could easily spend that 25 quid, couldn't you?
Let's put it this way, I spend like 50. I mean, I know I'm not an average girl, but I spend 15 or 16 pounds alone at McDonald's.
So you'll be alright.
I mean,
they're gonna let you through.
No, but what I'm saying is, say like, you know, I was with my like family or my sister or something like that. Obviously, I wouldn't be doing that right now, but like, you know, if they don't lift the limit, I mean, she does only have a Happy Meal, I suppose. It's like 2 quid, so yeah, it'll probably be okay.
I mean, I think they did it to try and limit the queue size to get people moving. But the trouble is, I don't know if any of you have driven past these McDonald's since they opened, but the queues go for miles. Who's gonna? And McDonald's is nice, don't get me wrong, but who's gonna queue up for an hour and a half for it?
Oh, I tell you what, right?
You did.
No, that was KFC.
McDonald's at breakfast is so good, and if McDonald's in Wisbech had been open and selling breakfast this morning, I'd have queued forever to get that. But
I don't queue up for 2 hours for Magic Mountain, so I'm not going to start for McDonald's.
You mean Space Mountain?
Whatever it's called.
What food does Space Mountain do?
It's a ride.
It's a ride with the same sort of trick queue as they're using everywhere else, where you fold backwards and forwards.
It's Disney ride. It's like in every Disney, I think.
You get to the front outside, you see the queue, and it folds back and forwards on itself about 15 times, and you think, oh my god, I'm going to be here 2 hours. And you queue up, and when you get to the end of the queue and it goes through the door inside, there's another queue bigger than the one you've already been in, winding its way deeper into the ride until you get to it. So that's why I call it a trick queue, you see. So you're actually there for like 4 hours queuing up sometimes.
Yeah, I've been to Florida a couple of times, and I must be the only person who's ever been to Florida and never been to Disney.
Oh, God.
And Florida is well worth seeing. It's got, sort of
Crocodiles?
alligators and all sorts of other things out there.
Yeah.
Old British forts. It's a good place.
Hmm.
Don't have to go to Disney. And certainly standing in the queue for 4 hours really doesn't appeal.
Well, you'll be pleased to know there are other restaurants following McDonald's lead. Burger King, KFC, Nando's, Starbucks, Pizza Express, Harry Ramsden and many more. Even Pret-a-Manger, Jonathan. So that'll be right up your street.
Pret-a-Manger?
That's
I
too
don't think
tough.
I've ever bought anything in Pret-a-Manger.
All right, okay. I just thought you didn't like the fast food because you thought it was low quality food, and Pret-a-Manger is a little bit more upmarket.
Oh, yeah. It's still fast food. At the end of the day, it's a sandwich or whatever it is.
Sam, which are you most interested in out of that list?
Nando's, I think.
I don't know about Nando's takeaway though.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Hard to say. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much covered our list of things to talk about, and I'm pleased to say that I did start the recording this time, so unlike our failed Friday night escapade, we've managed to get this one done. However, I do want to ask if you've got anything final you want to say before we go. I'm going to go to you second, Jonathan, because you never have anything to say. Maybe this time you'll think of something. Sam, have you got anything you want to add, anything you want to talk about at the end of the podcast?
No.
Excellent. Jonathan, got one?
I just remind people that Dominic Cummings is Benedict Cumberbatch.
Thank you.
You heard it here first.
Yeah,
Isn't Dominic Cummings the guy that was the, they said he broke the rules or something, they tried to take him to court and then he won?
Was that the vote leave guy they took to court? I really can't remember. You could look it up on your internet, Sam.
On Wikipedia right now.
Hmm.
He was special advisor to Michael Gove at first.
Hmm.
Oh, including the time Gove served as Secretary of State for Education. So when you're saying about how
he is the guy. He probably was part of what Gove did.
Right? Yeah. And
That's what I'm saying. He'd be ideal to do a review.
No wonder the lefties hate him so much. He's like their arch enemy.
And then he was the director of Vote Leave. And I'm sure, I'm just trying to campaign for the EU. He was born in Durham, that's why the Durham link, I'm guessing. His mother was a teacher, interesting, or is. He went to a state primary and was privately educated at the Durham School and then Exeter College at Oxford. And he got a first in ancient and modern history.
Well, I guess that makes it time to go, guys. We had a few of our regular watchers kind of contact us and say what happened. I was looking forward to my Friday show. So it's nice to see that some people are interested in why we're not here and why we are here. We did post it on our Facebook group. So if you're watching this and you're not on our Facebook group, go and join the Facebook group, and that will be a great thing to do. The link is in the description, because that will mean that you can kind of see when we're announcing what we're going to do or when we've made a mistake like we did the other night. Also, please like this post. Please comment on this post if you found something interesting you want to say about. Please do subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Until then, we've been Unapologetic, the UK podcast on politics, news and stuff from a right of centre viewpoint. Say good night, Sam.
Night.
Say good night, Jonathan.
Good night.
I'm Steve, and we'll talk to you soon.